Hello, in this short video we are going to take a look at an example from a register for a local tribunal. They do vary a little bit in layout. Hopefully the one you've got looks somewhat similar to this, with information arranged in columns and each row being a summary of one man's case. This particular example is from Poplar, and we're going to take a look at case number 492, which is for H. Palmer, who worked as a sugar boiler. The address column tells us he lived at 148 Brown Hill Road, Catford, and that he was aged 31. Now for employer, we can see there are ditto marks covering a few of these men. So they are all working for the employer who's named at the top of this column, who was G. Clark and Son Limited Sugar Boilers, who are based at Millwall Docks. Moving across, we have the grounds for application. So we have grounds A and D recorded here. So ground A is an occupational ground and ground D is a serious hardship ground. So we have whether the man or employer is making the application, and we've got an E for employer. You see further down we've got M for man for other cases. The date that the application is received, we're not worrying about because we're just recording the date that the meeting was actually held, where the decision was made. That information can be found further along the page. And we've actually got a couple of different dates here. I'm going to record both of those so that we can capture everything. So the first time that Mr. Palmer came up at the Poplar Tribunal is the 13th of July 1916, and at that point he's granted conditional exemption. What then seems to have happened is about 11 months later, he comes up again on the 21st of June 1917, and his certificate is withdrawn. So he's been granted exemption. 11 months later, that exemption gets cancelled. And this C number, I would guess, is his certificate number that he would have been issued with that was then cancelled. If we keep going across, we can find that he actually appealed against this decision. So on the 21st of June, his certificate is cancelled. On the, I think that's 24th of July 1917, there is an appeal tribunal case for him, and they actually grant him a little bit more exemption, so exemption until the 24th of September 1917. So not as good as the conditional exemption he originally had, but actually slightly more generous than what the local tribunal had done in withdrawing his certificate with immediate effect. So now that I've read through the case, I'm ready to start inputting information. So I'm going to start with my initials. The archive the record is from is Tower Hamlets Local History Library and Archives. It is a local tribunal, and it's from Poplar, and actually this book has been indexed already, so we don't have Poplar on our list. I'm just using this as an example. So for now I shall click Other and type in Poplar. But you should find the tribunal you're working on will most likely be in the list. You may also find, if you're using one of our partially pre-filled forms, that these early questions will all have been filled in for you already. For appeal tribunal cases, what is the originating local tribunal? This isn't an appeal tribunal case, so we leave that blank. Document reference number. So follow your local archives instructions on this because it's probably going to vary a bit. What I'm going to do for this example is go back to the beginning of the book, where there is a number written on the inside of the cover, and I'm going to type that in here. So L/PMB/B/6/1. Let's go back to the page where Mr. Palmer is. There he is. Case number, he is case number 492. Record type, I shall tick register. Extent of record, again, different archives may have different ways of doing this. For this example, I'm just going to type in register. Who is making the application? Let's go back to the column where that information is. It's the employer. This is a tick all that applies. So if it was the man and the employer, which does happen sometimes, you can tick both if you need to. Man's first name, let's go back to the name column. Unfortunately, we don't have his first name. We just know it began with an H, so I shall type in his initial. Man's last name, Palmer. His age we have is 31. Whether he attested under the Derby scheme. Now, unfortunately, they haven't recorded that in this particular register. Some of them do, this one doesn't, so we shall just have to tick unknown. Medical grade, again, we don't have that here. You may have it in yours, but I shall leave it blank here. His address is 148 Brown Hill Street, Brown Hill Road rather, Catford. His occupation is sugar boiler. Then we get to the information about his employer. So we can take that information from up at the top of the column because he's got ditto marks underneath it. So G. Clark and Son Limited, sugar boiler. Oh, I'm getting ahead of myself here. Type of business, sugar boiler. Occupational sector. So this is where we ask you to make a judgment call on which category you would put his occupation into. So for this one, for sugar boiling, I'm going to go with food processing. Grounds on which application is made, we have A and D. This is another tick all that apply, so I can tick both. What is being asked for? Unfortunately, we don't have that. Obviously, the employer is asking for exemption of some kind, but we don't know exactly what, so I shall leave that blank. We don't have reasons in support of the application. You tend to only get those on the application forms. Date of tribunal meeting. Let's come across to the column where we have that. Now, we've got a couple of different dates going on here, so I'm going to start with the earliest one, which is the first appearance at the tribunal that Mr. Palmer had. So we have 13th of the 7th, 1916. And the decision they make is conditional exemption. I shall take that. But then we've also got this other information going on. So we can see that 11 months later, this exemption is cancelled. So I'm going to include that in the details box for the decision of the tribunal. So on 21st of the 6th, 1917, Palmer's exemption certificate was withdrawn. Was the application successful? So thinking back to the first decision that he gets, it's presumably at least partially successful because he does get exemption. However, because we don't know what was being asked for, it's difficult to judge. So I'm actually going to write or tick unclear. We don't have any observation of the military representative or national service representative here. You might in your example. Here I don't, so I'm going to leave it. And the follow-up question about that as well. For local tribunal registers, is there a date of an appeal tribunal hearing? Now, you can see most of these are blank, so most of them don't go to appeal. Palmer does. I'm going to make my best guess at what that number is. I think it's 24, so I'm going to type in 24th of the 7th. Helps you actually typing. 24th of the 7th, 1917. And the decision they make is for temporary exemption because they've given him exemption until the end of September 1917. Please describe any supporting documents because this is a register. There aren't any, so I shall write none. Would you recommend this case for further research? Always tricky, or often tricky, completely subjective. I usually make the decision personally when I'm doing these based on, is there something you're particularly curious to know more about for this man's case? Is he doing a particularly interesting or unusual job? Does he have particularly interesting or unusual family circumstances? Is he kind of towards the upper end of the age group for conscription or towards the lower end? In this case, I'm going to say yes, because I'm interested in the employment situation. So the fact there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 men that the employer is applying for at the same time, and that they're initially granted exemption, but it later gets cancelled. I would be interested to know what's happened there. So for other notes or observations, I am going to type in there. Palmer is one of 55, one of 5 men the employer applies for at the same time. But you can use this to kind of mop up anything that hasn't been recorded elsewhere, or anything you would like to make a note of. You don't have to put anything in there, but it's there if you do have something you would like to say. And we're ready to submit, so I shall press submit. And there we go, off it has gone into the database. And if you would like to do another one, click on submit another response and you'll be ready to go again.